Hi, happy July 4th. Today we celebrate the birthday of the United States of America. And our second president, John Adams, said that he hoped that every July 4th we would revisit our first principles. On that day, July 4th, 1776, 56 very brave men signed a document that would change the world. I say that they were brave because if the British had won the war, all of them would have been hanged as traitors against the King of England. This document contained ideas that represented not only new political possibilities, but new personal possibilities for the human race. The very idea that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with the inalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. The idea, according to the Declaration, is that governments are instituted to secure those rights, not diminish, chip away, or limit those rights, but to secure those rights. And that if the government is not doing that job, that it is the right of the people to alter it or to abolish it. Now, if those ideas are no longer inscribed in our hearts, if they're written in parchment under glass at a museum, or they're inscribed on marble walls, but generation after generation no longer inscribed and embraced by the people of any particular generation, then those ideas begin to lose moral force. And when they lose moral force, we become easy to play. And that's what's happened. We have forgotten the radicalism of the American experiment, the insistence on individual liberty, the insistence on the equality of all men, the insistence on inalienable rights, and insistence on the fact that the government is here to secure those rights and that the people have the power, and that if the government is not doing its job, the people can alter that. And so on this day particularly, I think it's important that we have a very mindful, not a mindless July 4th holiday. What happened on that day was not only extraordinary in relation to what had come before, but it also said a lot about what would come after. Because those 56 men, among them, 41 were slave owners. And what does that mean? That means that those 41 signed a document positing the equality of all men, even though they themselves were perpetrators of slavery. That struggle, that dichotomy is built into the system in the United States. It's baked into the cake. It's part of our characterological DNA, that we have always been from the very beginning and throughout our history, both and. We have within every generation reiterating the same struggle, the same drama. We have always contained forces of those of us who really understand the depth and the meaning and the importance of these ideas. There have been millions of Americans who have been willing to struggle for those ideas, to stand on them, to sacrifice for them, and some have even died for them. But then there have also been in every generation, and it's important that we realize that ours is no different. There have also been forces who, for their own ideological and or financial reasons, had no intention of seeing those principles actually actualized because it was inconvenient to their purposes. And they have proven throughout our history that they would do whatever it took to make sure that those principles were not fully actualized. Every generation has lived out this drama, some more dramatically than others. But if you look at the arc of American history, we have a lot to be proud of. Because with abolition, we repudiated slavery. With the women's suffrage movement, we repudiated the institutional suppression of women. With the establishment of organized labor, our ancestors repudiated the inherent injustices of the Gilded Age. And with the civil rights movement, our ancestors repudiated the evils of segregation and the institutional suppression of Black people in the American South. In a very real way, it's our turn now. Today, there's not a particular institution that is transgressing against the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, so much as it's an economic paradigm. The very idea that corporate profits should take precedence over the safety and the health and the well-being of the American people. In a way, we've regressed to the age of the old landed gentry in England, except it's not the old landed gentry of England. It's insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, big chemical companies, big oil companies, big food companies, gun manufacturers, and defense contractors. And we, in our time, absolutely must repudiate the inherent injustices of any system that says only a few, whether it be as it is today, stockholder class, billionaire class, donor class, whatever you want to call it, they have no right to hoard the resources of this country, so that we have a country in which a government of the people and by the people and for the people has, for all intents and purposes, been replaced by a government of a few of the people, by a few of the people, and for a few of the people. This is a day to remember all that, because the Declaration of Independence is our mission statement. It's our vision board. It's important, as John Adams said, that we remember on this day what our first principles are. And I think particularly given all of the drama in our country this time, it's a very sober moment in American history. And I know a lot of us are working through a lot of these things in our minds and in our hearts. You know, this is not a time when it's all about collecting more data or collecting more information. It's a time for greater understanding and greater depth. That one day in these United States, and hopefully in the world someday, all men, all women, all people will truly live lives in which life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness are simply the order of the day. And when we serve the ages, not just our own personal interests, but the higher ideals of our country and of all that is good and true and beautiful, it changes us as people. And that's what I think July 4th can be. A day to think very deeply about who we are as a nation, what the higher ideals of our nation represent and have represented throughout our history, so that we in our generation make good on the promise and do what we can to move it forward. Happy July 4th.